I think I need access to share my screen.
Oh yeah, that would probably help. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. Do you have access?
Yeah, there we go.
Do you want us to get started, Shelley? Or
Let's
when we're,
It
are you
is 2:45. I would like to introduce my friend Lolly. Lolly, it's hard to say your last name. Occhino?
Occhino.
Occhino. Lolly Occhino and Jason Robinson, and they work for AURI. I know Lolly through all the different committees that we get to sit on, and this is the first time I have the honor of meeting Jason. And they want to tell you about their program, and they want to find out how they can help Cottage Foods.
Right. So I'll just introduce myself briefly. Thanks for that intro, Shelley. And then I'll let Jason's going to cover the first few slides, and then I'll cover the last few. So like Shelley said, my name is Lolly Occhino. I'm a senior food scientist with AURI. I'm on the technical team. I've been with AURI about 6.5 years. Prior to that, I've been in the food industry for many years. So I've got quite a bit of experience in all types of food products, food product development, ingredients, applications, all of those things. With AURI, we're able to provide one-on-one technical assistance to people. So I'll let Jason jump in, introduce himself, and introduce AURI.
Thanks, Lolly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jason Robinson. As Lolly already mentioned, also with AURI. I have been with the organization be 5 years, well, just over 5 years now, almost exactly. And my role is in business development. I came from the food industry, spent 19 years at General Mills in research and development. I'm an engineer by degree, and I have been working in this business development role where we support small food businesses as well as ecosystem or public initiatives as well to prop up the entire community. We wanted to share the organization with you today and how we might be able to help and really what we do and how we do it. So we're going to run through a few slides, and then we'll probably have a little bit of time for some questions afterwards if we can help. So we'll just go ahead and get started. AURI as an organization stands for the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. We are a nonprofit corporation that was created by the Minnesota legislature in 1989 and funded through statutory language that's focused on our mission of utilization of Minnesota's rich agricultural resources. In formal legislative speak, our mission is to foster long-term economic benefit for Minnesota through value-added agricultural products. With that in mind, the way we do our work tends to be by providing affordable access to expertise and infrastructure, and specifically as it relates to food science expertise and infrastructure through analytical testing services. We'll get into a little bit more about that, but just as continued background for the organization, we're structured to provide support to both clients and the ecosystem across 4 different focus areas. The first being food, primarily packaged food. We occasionally provide support to the retail industry, whether it's restaurants or whether it's businesses that are selling direct to consumer. But for the most part, the work that we do is focused on packaged food. And more recently, we have expanded our team to include some meat science support. And Lolly will spend a minute mentioning that as well. We also dabble and have significant resources devoted to co-products, which is all about waste utilization from agricultural processing. So that would be, for instance, transforming the waste product from flour milling into kitty litter. We've helped some companies that do that kind of work. Most notably, one called Sweet Scoop out of Detroit Lakes, help them understand how their organization and their product developed over time, and ultimately driving revenue back to the farmer by providing testing, product development, and analytical support to companies like Sweet Scoop. We also work in bio-based products, which is all about transforming industrial chemicals from a petrochemical source to a renewable agricultural source. So this would be about transforming petroleum-based products into soy-based products, for instance. And then finally, we do a lot of work in renewable energy, whether that's ethanol or anaerobic digestion, but ultimately it's about renewable energy that is supported by Minnesota agriculture. Now, the work that we do tends to be broken up along these three categories, whether it's commercialization services, in public initiatives, or in our AURI Connects branded programming that's all about what we like to call innovation networking. So let me just take a second and kind of go through each one of those. Under our commercialization services umbrella, we provide support in both private and one-to-one level projects. I'm sorry, those are the same thing, in private or one-to-one projects. This consists of applied research, which is all about transforming research into real opportunities with direct support. We do this through technical assistance, which is product and process development, troubleshooting and problem solving, and basically utilizing the expertise of our staff and our lab infrastructure. This, it also consists of business, project feasibility, and like I said, this hands-on technical assistance. And all of that is in service to commercializing new ideas. And so that can consist of, like I mentioned, feasibility, support for tactical needs, such as creating nutrition labels and so forth. One program that runs through this service area is our Entrepreneur in Residence program, which tends to be more for companies that have an idea, but don't have the resources available or the lab space to build that idea out. It tends to be more in the bio-based products arena or the animal feed arena, but there's no reason why food companies can't necessarily take advantage of that program as well. The second area, which is our public initiatives area, these are initiatives that we design and build because we see a gap in the marketplace, or there's a specific need in the ecosystem that needs a catalyst to get some work done. And these opportunities represent a body of work that tends to be free to the world and really can be seen as applied R&D for industry benefit, as opposed to single or one-to-one benefit. We have a program here that we use called the Ag Innovation Partnership, which again is meant to catalyze activity in areas that require some of that catalysis. For instance, in February, we'll actually have the results of a project that we initiated last fall that's focused on understanding the business dynamics of shared use commercial kitchens in Minnesota and the challenges of the operational models and differences between urban and rural locations, which is of particular importance to this audience as we're talking about potentially scaling businesses or highlighting areas for food production. Those results will be presented at a webinar on February 8th that is actually run through our AURI Connects program, which focuses on industry convenings and actively engaging the value chain on topics related to value-added agriculture. In this case, we utilize this branded platform to convene industry thought leader groups, forums, and networking groups, and to disseminate learnings that we have picked up through our public initiatives and in other areas. I already mentioned a webinar Wednesday. We also have another program through AURI Connects called Fields of Innovation, which is really focused on building novel supply chains for cover cropping systems and new farmer-generated sustainable cropping systems that can have benefit for both soil health as well as in the marketplace. So that's a general overview of our programming. Location-wise, we have clients all over the state. This map represents clients that we've helped throughout the state. heavily situated in the Twin Cities area, but we have employees, both virtual employees and lab-based employees scattered throughout the state as well. So we have a footprint that is statewide. Our corporate headquarters is in Crookston, Minnesota, which is really our admin team and finance team. And then we have lab services and a meat sciences lab in Marshall, Minnesota, on the campus of Southwest Minnesota State University. And we also have our co-products lab where we do drying and pelletizing and animal feed work in Waseca, Minnesota. And Lolly and I will be officing in a new location on the College of Food Science at the University of Minnesota in St. Paul here, hopefully sometime soon in this new year. But about 30% of our employees are virtual and scattered throughout the state. Lolly and I are based here in the Twin Cities, but certainly have clients all over the state, as I previously mentioned. Our food team is really driven by a guiding principle that stems from the overarching mission statement of AURI. And that's really about transforming Minnesota's rich agricultural products into sustainable food businesses by providing affordable access to consumer and food science expertise and infrastructure. There's a lot packed into that statement, so I'll just highlight a couple of things. The first is that word sustainable. When we think about sustainable, it doesn't necessarily mean good for the environment, though that's certainly a case. What we're most interested in is helping businesses become financially viable and sustainable so that you can meet your mission statement or grow your profit year over year. And frankly, just continue to exist. And so that's one of the areas that we take great pride in as it relates to our mission of fostering long-term economic benefit. The second component is around affordable. Lolly will talk a little bit about our cost structure, but suffice it to say that because we're largely state funded, we are able to provide significant project services and access to our labs at a much lower cost than you could if you went to a third party. Typically, that means we operate on a cost share perspective, where the smallest businesses only pay for 20% of our total costs. Lolly will share more, but I wanted to just highlight that up front as we're talking about what we can do. As you continue to look around this slide, we also offer a number of free services. Most notably on the right-hand side, you can see guidebooks that we've developed through our Agricultural Innovation Partnership Program that are meant to provide learning for our base clients to get a better understanding of, for instance, how to select packaging for food products and how to measure and understand what a shelf life really is and how it's different from food safety and how you build food safety into a food product. Those resources are free and available on our website, and we're continuing to grow them every day. So if you're looking for an answer to a question, I'd highly recommend going to auri.org and looking up our food services, because you may very well find that your question can be answered by something that we've already posted on our site for free that you can access. I'd be loath to I'd be lying if I said that we did all of our work alone, because we don't. We rely on the collaborations that we've cultivated over the years, and you can see this cluster of businesses and organizations that we've worked with, whether that's the Minnesota Department of Agriculture or the Food Safety Defense Task Force, Grow North, which is now turning into Naturally Minnesota. Our work is very ecosystem focused, and we pride ourselves on being able to connect for funding needs, for partnering opportunities in work streams, or in general, to just be a general support partner for questions that are asked, that technical services provider that can really come at challenges and problems from a food science point of view that we can help with. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Lolly to talk a little bit more in depth about our food team and the services and facilities that we provide. So Lolly, on to you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we wanted to get you a little bit more detail on what we can do. So we have here a picture of the staff, the three of us, Jason, Ben, and myself, are dedicated to the food team. Ben is another food scientist that we have that is located in our Marshall lab. And then Ashley supports our team. She's a project manager, and she's usually the person that you would work with if you wanted to do a project with AURI. She would help you out with an application and getting your project started into our system. Jason already kind of mentioned that we have expertise on the staff in food science and processing and packaging. Jason and myself, as we explained, we have quite a number of years of experience in the food industry. And even though Jason's on the commercialization team, he does have a technical background, and our backgrounds kind of complement each other nicely, because he is a chemical engineer and has more experience in processing and packaging versus my background in food science being more in the product development and ingredients applications. For the one-on-one support, we've listed some of the capabilities that we have. So some of the things are, hands-on product development guidance. One of the examples we like to use that you can probably relate to, we had a client come to us and he was working on kind of a jam product that had a combination, I think, of fruits and vegetables, and he was having some trouble with some separation and also just some processing efficiencies. And so I went and worked with him for an afternoon at the commercial kitchen space that he was at, and I was able to identify maybe 3 top things that he could do to improve. He was using, the wrong pectin for the type of jam that he had. So that's just kind of an example of, some of the technical guidance. We can help you with nutrition facts, creating a nutrition label. We can do some analytical testing, and a lot of times for, maybe for a cottage food producer, maybe you just need some initial testing, say on the pH, and maybe some guidance on, maybe the pH is a little bit higher than you would like, and you need some guidance on, what type of acid that you could add to help get the pH down. Some kind of basic regulatory guidance and ingredient packaging. We do quite a bit of work with people that are doing acidified hot filled foods, and we can work very closely with them to help them through the process of, if they were to want to transition into wholesale for a product like that, there's certain requirements that you have to meet, and we're very, very familiar with those and can help through the process and kind of get them ready to launch into market. And then helping provide guidance on the stability, shelf life. If you need help with scaling up, whether it's, you want to take the next step and look for a co-packer, or whether you're just working in a commercial kitchen and you need help with efficiencies. And then we can help with school meal crediting as well, with something that's needed, that's called a product formulation sheet. If you were to want to sell into schools and say you wanted to have your product credit for certain like fruit and vegetable credits or grain or meat. Jason mentioned we also have a lab in Marshall, Minnesota, where we can do these analyses, common ones like water activity and pH. We can also do moisture, and then we can do some of the other analyses that might be required. For example, for nutrition, if you're doing a product, say that's fried, we might want to analyze it for fat so we can understand the fat pickup. If you want to move on to the next slide, then we just wanted to mention, I'm not sure, with Cottage Food Producer Group, you're probably not selling meat, but we wanted you to be aware that we do have staff that have expertise in meat science. We have Clay, who's our meat innovation specialist, and then Laura, who is our business development director for meat. So she has a role parallel to Jason, but just working on the meat side of things. And they have quite a bit of expertise. And we do have a very nice lab in Marshall, Minnesota that is set up for meat product development with the various kind of equipment that you would need, including a smoker and packaging equipment. So if you have the need, you know that you can tap into that resource. And do we have one more slide, Jason? And then, as Jason mentioned, just wanted to let you know a little bit more about, you know, if you're wanting to work with AURI. First of all, Jason and I are always willing to talk to people. If you have a question, please feel free to contact us. We actually very much enjoy talking to people, helping them through their questions and problems. And if we're able to help you just through, you know, a phone call, that's perfectly fine. There would be no need to open a project. But if there is a need, if there's something that you need that's a little bit more, that's going to take a little bit more time to open a project with AURI, we would have that conversation. We would determine that you want to open a project. We would have you fill out an application. It's a pretty straightforward application, and the application actually includes a non-disclosure as well. So you would be able to share your recipe and process with us. We would then, you know, we have some internal paperwork that we work through, and we have a minimum project fee of $250. But then we also have a tiered structure for the cost of a project. So if you're a small business at less than 250,000, which as a cottage food producer, you probably would be, you would only be paying 20% of our cost. And typically many of our smaller food projects are just at that minimum level of $250. And we're able to provide quite a bit of service for that $250. You typically might be able to get help troubleshooting with a recipe, some nutrition labels, maybe even some analytical if you needed pH measurements and water activity. It usually works out to around, you know, 15 hours of our work just for $250, which is really a great benefit that you have being in Minnesota to take advantage of AURI and our nonprofit status and the fact that we have our funding through the state. And I believe that's our last content slide. So I think that we are open certainly to answering any questions that you might have in the last few minutes of our time slot.
Thank you. So last time we were talking, Lala, we discussed the idea of people being able to work with you guys to develop and have some of their recipes tested in your labs.
Yeah, so excuse me. Our lab, the way our lab functions and just kind of the way our organization is set up is that our lab and the work that we do is kind of intended to support a project. So we don't really operate our lab as, you know, just send in your samples and for $15 we'll measure the water activity. We just, because of all the support we need to provide to multiple companies, we don't work it that way. We did, so we're certainly open to helping and doing testing on a project basis. We did have some conversations. We know that there are a lot of cottage food producers and there's a need out there. So we have had some conversations about, you know, whether there might be a way for us to kind of open a general project where there would be, you know, potentially an opportunity for people to send samples in and yet AURI would kind of have a way to manage it and track it. So those discussions are sort of kind of underway as we are kind of talking about how we can better support cottage food producers. But right now, like I said, we're not really set up to kind of do those like one-off tests.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's important to note as well that those one-off tests are really in development phase of a product to confirm food safety. As a producer, you should be measuring pH much more frequently than just at the beginning. to confirm that you're continuing to manage and maintain food safety over time. So as a company, if you're making a salsa and you're adding lemon juice to acidify the product to make sure that it's food safe, you should probably be testing the pH on every batch that you make. Certainly AURI can potentially help you out initially to make sure that the product meets the expectations, but that's what we call a critical control point when it comes to creating food products. And to confirm food safety, that's something you should be measuring on a batch by batch basis. So I just wanted to put that out there from a food safety controls point of view, because that's a critical component to understanding that it's very different to make a product for your family to eat as compared to making a product to sell to others that is meant to be consumed a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months later, to confirm that the product continues to maintain food safety on every batch that's sold.
Yep. And that's how we are actually trained. If you've taken, I believe the tier 2 training, that's what I remember is
Correct.
that you have the initial, it's an approved recipe, and then you take in and
Mhm.
you log the pH, the batch, you get a
Correct.
batch number, so on and
And-
so forth. Yes.
And we can certainly help with the upfront work. Like, for example, if
Correct.
someone just needed help, like what kind of a pH meter, should I get?
Right.
And how do I make sure it's standardized, and just kind of, that upfront work we can certainly help with as well.
There's a question in the chat. It says, I saw there are several research reports on bioplastics on the AURI website. Could you describe the basics of that work and how it might have applications for, say, packaging in the future? Cottage Foods requires a lot of plastic packaging, and I'm always looking for alternatives.
Sure. I can't speak to exactly what those bioplastics reports are about, but what I can tell you is that in general, the bioplastics work, we've got a lot of content on our website, so I apologize for that. But let's talk a little bit about packaging in general, because I do think that that's really, really important to understand. During my time at General Mills, I spent 3 years leading a team focused on packaging development for the Nature Valley granola bar brand. And one thing that I think is really important to understand is, while there are concerns about plastic packaging in the marketplace, and rightfully so, the media loves to highlight the plastic waste that is continuing to clog up the oceans and other locations. It's also important to note that very few other sources of packaging can actually protect the food product as well as most plastic packaging can. So that's something to keep in mind, is while plastic packaging is certainly vilified, because it is based on petroleum and it does stick around in the environment for a while, the reality is that it can also prevent food waste because it can extend shelf life. And I do think that the idea of bioplastics is an opportunity, but at the end of the day, bioplastics are simply plastics that come from renewable sources. They still have a plastic structure at the end. Bioplastics does not mean compostable. And those are some very, or biodegradable. And those are some distinctions that become more apparent the deeper you dive into the plastics industry and the packaging industry. But as small cottage food producers, one thing that I recommend is that you actually take a look at our packaging guidebook on our website to learn more about why selecting the right packaging for extended shelf life is actually really important. Because if you put that same granola bar that's in a plastic package today, if you put that into a paper bag, that granola bar will be rock hard in a week, versus in the plastic pouch, which will extend the shelf life to an edible opportunity for up to 8 months. I don't know if that answers the question, but there's a lot to dive into if that's of interest.
Matt Rosen has a question.
Hand up.
Hi there. Quick
Yeah.
question. I know we've only got like 1 minute left, but quick question about labels. You said you can do nutritional labels. So if I opened up a project to do, I do shortbread cookies, nothing but shortbread cookies. So if I opened up a project to do, say, 20 recipes, I assume I just send you the recipe, not necessarily the actual cookie. That's correct?
It's on a case by case basis, but if it's cookies, typically we can take your recipe and make, and then your process. And we have a nutrition software, and we would just enter in all your ingredients in the software, and we'd be able to generate the label. Now, sometimes we do need to do analyses, and like I mentioned, that's typically for a product where, say, there's no way we can do a calculation. Like if a food is fried, you can't really know how much oil is picked up and moisture is lost. So in that case, we might want to do an analysis. But with a cookie, we probably, as long as we know all the ingredients and we have the details on those, and we know, say, how long you baked it and how much moisture it lost, we can certainly do that.
I think it's fair to say, Matt, that a shortbread cookie is probably not a health food. But I mean, I joke, but the other thing that I will say is the FDA has an exemption in place for very small businesses, such that you are not required by law to have nutrition labeling on the package. What that means is that while you might not be required, and it's definitely not required for cottage foods, there are retailers, as you grow, retailers expect to see it, and consumers are also used to seeing that information. So it's not necessarily something you must have as a cottage foods producer. It's not even something you must have as a small wholesale food manufacturer. But it is certainly something that that we would recommend, because retailers expect it and consumers want to see it.
Yeah, a lot of consumers like to see that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have people at farmers markets asking me to see it, and of course, like you said, we're not required to, so I don't do it for my cottage food. But I do have my wholesale food manufacturer, and I've started to get into coffee shops and grocery stores, and so I feel like it's in the very near future that. And if nothing else, it just makes my cookies look more professional by having that nutritional label on there. So it may not be required, but I'm thinking that maybe just to as far as professional looking, I might want to do that. So when you do the analysis, and I know we're over time, I apologize. But when you do the analysis and you send it to me, is it like already ready for a label, and I just hit? Is it come in a PDF, or is it more like a data analysis and I got to take it out of there?
It actually looks, it's the nutrition label.
Awesome.
Yep. So
If you want the data, we
take
can
down our information and give us a call. Or
That's right.
Awesome.
send
That'd
an
be great.
email.
And
Thank
we
you
can
very
send you
much.
we can send you the data too, if you'd like.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly an opportunity, but yeah, it would come in a ready to be put on a product label format, as you would typically see.
Okay. And I'm not opposed to sending you guys cookies either. So just throwing that out there.
Make sure to contact me, not Jason. Then.
Yeah, no kidding. Actually, Matt, as you're going off here, the other thing that I would recommend is there are some tools on the internet that you might be able to take advantage of as well. Obviously, you won't get the oversight from a professional food scientist. For cookies, it might be okay. So you might want to check it out. The one we've looked at in the past is called Recipal, RECIPAL. But it's not always as accurate as we'd like it to be, because it's relying upon the person entering the information to have some basic understanding of the food science and what's important to put into the calculator that they use. And you might not always know exactly what's important to do so, which is why there's a benefit to working with seasoned food scientists such as Lolly, who does this on a daily basis.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So could you use the same software for pet treats then?
I didn't realize I went on mute. Yeah, there's no reason why we couldn't.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, pet treats are,
As long as obviously it's only treats that are cottage food, not food. I mean, because obviously food is a whole different category. But for a treat, sure, if it's like a dog biscuit, I mean, we could.
Yeah, and I'm specifically looking more at the frosting, because last December I went down this huge rabbit hole, and I was looking at manufactured processed frostings for dog biscuits. And then I was looking at homemade and comparing them, and the stuff that they were actually using, it has a higher glycemic index than most of the stuff that I use here at home. And then if I interchange it out with some arrowroot and different things, it still has a good flavor, but it has a lower glycemic index, which ultimately is better.
Sure, sure. And that's, yeah, we can talk about that. I know we're over time, so.
Yep. I'll call you offline or email you.
Yeah, this has been fascinating, and we hope you'll come back and talk to us a little bit more.
Yeah, we're here.
Always
So
open to
again,
it.
feel free to reach out. We're more than willing to help. So
We are friends to the cottage foods industry.
Thank
And
you very
the
much.
challenge is that there's a lot of you and there's not that many of us. So we help, we like to help in large scale formats as best we can. And if there are places where we can engage that would be in a virtual format to help answer questions and so forth, we're happy to explore those avenues. For instance, an online bulletin board where questions might be asked or something like that. That can certainly be a chance to provide some insight.
mhm.
Good to know. That might be good for our website, Shelley.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. One last question. You talked about your webinar on February 8th. Is that
Yes.
the project that Kurt Schneider is also working on with you guys, or is that something separate? I think he's working with you, Jason.
Yeah, Kurt is actually working on something a little bit different. So if we think
Yep.
about the type of manufacturing in the food industry, we've got on one end of the continuum, we've got commercial kitchens. On the other end of the continuum, we've got larger scale commercial contract manufacturing. And so the commercial kitchens work is separate from what Kurt's doing. And what Kurt is doing is focused more on as you really scale a business into licensing and you're looking to you're looking to get into national grocers like Target. And so it's a much higher output that you're looking for.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thanks. So we did go a little bit over time, but that's okay. It was fascinating, and we would definitely have Lolly and Jason back again. We want to welcome Michelle Sharp from Meet the Minnesota Makers, and she's going to do a workshop for us. And Michelle, are you there? There she is.
Muted. Shelley, so people I assume have been sitting and focusing for a while. Should we take like a 5-minute break for people to get some water, coffee, stretch?
We can if people want to go. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think the 2-hour long one really wore people down a little bit. It was so much good information in such a short period of time.
Yes, okay. So we will meet everybody back in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please come back. Then, Shelley, do you have on your screen where we'll be able to use
I'm
the
gonna
breakout
make-
rooms?
Well, I'm going to make you the co-host,
Okay. Ooh.
and it says down at the bottom of my screen, breakout rooms. Do you have that now?
More
I see it.
breakout rooms. Yes.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, last night after you said that, I went and looked at it and I was like, okay. And my Zoom had not updated yet.
Okay.
So it went through all the updates and then I didn't recognize anything. And then I thought I had lost all the stuff for the conference and I was having a mini heart attack.
Oh no.
And then finally I figured it out and I was like, oh. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to call Jen at 11 o'clock at night and tell her I messed everything up.
It's
Well,
such
and
a
a little-
wonderful feeling.
Yeah, and a little backstory on it. Yesterday morning, when I was finishing up some of the invites for people, I looked at my calendar and then I went back into Zoom and looked, and it had populated all these meetings in the month of January, but it was all for the 12th and 13th. Anyway, so I started canceling them, and then all of a sudden I started panicking because I got this pop-up saying email blah 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 blah, and I'm like, no. So yeah, it was quite the day for Zoom. Over it.
Oh, yes. There's a. Oh,
Jason
okay.
put a warning. He said,
Yeah.
be aware that Recipel, like I mentioned, does not provide oversight from a food scientist. For simple products, this may not be a big deal, but for more complex products, especially if frying, extracting, or drying are involved, certain product attributes must be taken into account to ensure accuracy. But Recipel is likely more than good enough for that initial info to go to the consumer.
I was afraid it was more Zoom updates or feedback there.
No, it was Jason, just
No,
add.
well, I appreciate you in there, and I know I had learned in the early days of Zoom because of my prior non-for-profit job about that you had to have the breakout rooms enabled ahead of time. And back then, to make any changes, you had to have everyone log out and then come back in. So that was awesome. But so I'm sensitive to that particular Zoom quirk, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Well, this is the first time we'll be using it, so
Okay. All right. Well,
learning
hopefully
experience.
it will go all right and be productive for people.
Mhm.
Otherwise, technology and all that good stuff has been cooperating.
For the most part, we had a couple of hiccups, but nothing major.
Okay.
So Jason put Lolly's and his contact info in the chat if anybody else needs that.
Okay.
It's really nice that you could be with us, Michelle.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and I think they're settled. I also appreciate you accommodating our schedule. My husband's traveling for work the last 2 weeks with the snow days and all the other excitement that we've had. And so getting my little people home was an important thing here. So it's hard to tell what camera's off, but I think we're at the 5-minute, Shelley.
Okay.
See a couple people back. So we'll assume people will trickle in. So I guess I'll start. It's very strange starting from my little like corner Zoom box. In one of among my prior lives, I was a college Spanish teacher. So I'm used like giving a lecture or running a workshop sitting down. It feels so weird because I was one of those classroom instructors who like paced and moved around. So this is going to be hard to stay in one place, but I will do my best to stay on camera here. But thank you for having me, and to Shelley and Brenda of Slice of Nice who thought of me that I might be able to lend some insights in how to become friends with social media as part of your business venture and what you do. Before I dig in, I'm just as you can, if you want to put your camera on and wave, or if you want to do the Zoom raising your hand, how many of you have Instagram or Facebook account that you actively use now?
I do.
Okay. Okay. We got a few hands. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. How many of you publish at least weekly? I know Matt does.
You got some yeses in the chat also.
We got a few yeses are usually over there. Okay. Okay. Anybody on TikTok also?
Matt,
So Matt's gonna overachieve here. I'll let Matt handle the TikTok part then. That goes beyond my expertise here, but or I should say we're going to focus on Instagram and Facebook today, but just getting a sense of people's experience. Okay. So I'm going to bring up some slides and give you some feedback on my own experience. And then, as Shelley mentioned, this is going to be more of a workshop style. So I'm going to give a little introduction. And my goal today is that you walk out of here with a plan for how you want to take on your social media accounts here in 2023. We're going to talk about some specific pillars and way to organize your posts and how to focus them, and then how you can strategize the planning of those posts. So we're going to do this with the help of some slides. Let's see. Those come up okay? Thank you. Yes. All right. So trying to think here. The algorithm doesn't hate you. How to become friends with your social media. All right. So we're going to talk some strategies here today. So a little bit about me and my own crash course in social media. If you had told me a year ago that I would be invited to your conference to give some insight on how to use social media for your small business, I would have been rather surprised, to say the least. I started Meet the Minnesota Makers about a year and a half ago, initially as a newspaper column. My newspaper column runs in 3 Southeast Metro papers. It started in April of 2021, and it was part of my own response in the pandemic of questioning prior writing that I had done that was more of a historical perspective at looking at food and community building and looking at the small businesses around us right now, and how could I, with the purchasing power of a family of 4, better support small businesses. And so initially, Meet the Minnesota Makers was a way of connecting people who participated in farmers markets down here in the Southeast Metro with the readers of these local papers. And then the more you dig, the more people you find who are doing interesting and creative things. And so I wondered if it would be possible to establish an intentional community online to give a space for makers to connect with each other, for people who are interested in supporting local to connect with local producers, and create a space where food producers could meet with artists and artisans, could meet with small farms, could meet with the consumer packaged goods, and how could we cross-pollinate and bring all that together. And so about a year ago, I waded into the murky waters of social media to establish this space. And in the last year, I have learned so much. I have been just overwhelmed by the support and the enthusiasm for creating this intentional space, and to use my storytelling through maker features, product reviews, and a constant focus on local, to work with local makers to tell their stories through the maker features and product reviews that I publish on my site. But then in the last few months, last fall, I made the leap to leave the non-for-profit job I've had for the last 4 years to do Meet the Minnesota Makers full time, to be able to also offer the services of strengthening maker story through their own website, social media, and newsletters. And so working with people to revise their websites, to strategize on their social media, create their own content for their newsletters, and better communicate with their base. And I had to figure out how to do this, how to integrate what I was doing with social media, with the newspaper, with the website, how to get this to all talk to each other. And in the past year, I have somehow created a community of about 2,500 people between Facebook and Instagram. So no one's going to come to me for 0 to 10,000 in 3 months. I don't lip sync, I don't dance, but I consistently share a message about the local community, and hopefully some of what I have learned will be useful for you in your own social media. So our goals today, I want to make sharing your story on social media feel manageable. I want it to feel productive. I want you to see it as a part of your business plan. And we're going to talk about how you can strengthen the community that you're building around your business. And social media is a portion of that community building. So first, a little open brainstorming here. When you go onto social media, and something I learned, because before Meet the Minnesota Makers, the only time I had ever used Instagram was as a student project with, as I mentioned, I taught college Spanish before. And so I would make students use social media. We had a private group where then they would have to talk to each other in Spanish online as another way of forcing them to use the language. That was the extent of my Instagram knowledge before I established Meet the Minnesota Makers online about a year ago. And so I was thinking, from what I knew on Facebook, from the accounts that I had followed, when you look at your favorite accounts, what is their story? What's the niche that they're filling? Right? Nobody can share all the content that's out there. What's your favorite content that they share? What are the posts that you look forward to the most? Is it when they have recipes? Is it when they share something about their families? Is it what their dog's been up to this week? Right? What makes you check back? And to think about, what do you tend to save or share that you see on other accounts? And what makes you want to comment? And as you think about this, right, these are people or groups or families whose communities you choose to be a part of. There's something about their story that draws you in. There's always the people who I would invite you to think of these people as the ones when you're like, I haven't seen anything from fill in the blank for a while, right? And you actually go and look them up rather than just who appears in your feed, right? So there's something about their niche, their story that pulls you in. And as you have that floating around your head as just part of the base here, part of the foundation for your own accounts that you want to establish with the story that you want to share. But when you're doing this, there's a purpose. When you go back and look at these accounts and look at the kind of thing that they post, it might not seem like it, but there's a purpose. And I intentionally have these arrows crisscrossing all over the place to show us how these things interconnect. And I mentioned her on the bottom, and I want to preface this by saying, among the surprising things that I did this year was attend a free workshop by Katerina Mello of the Professional or Traveler about social media, which it felt like I should just know how to do social media. It's just a thing, right? When I first got a Facebook account, I just you found your friends and either you were going to meet up to play euchre or you weren't, or at least that's the primary reason I used it in grad school, was how we were meeting up for euchre, but that was the purpose, right? And here I wanted to use it for this community building, for this business. And so my sister actually sent me a link and was like, hey, if you're thinking about doing this, you should go check this out. And I thought, well, this is sort of ridiculous. I'm not going to a class about social media. And it was so useful. And Katerina Mello, you know, I don't follow everything that she said, or I would have a lot more reels on my feed and a few other things. But something that she talked about that really resonated with me was thinking about the purpose of your posts. And so you have a service that you're providing for your community, and those services all have a purpose. And so as I have listed here, right, is it information? Is it education? Is it inspiration? Or is it entertainment? And then any of these services can help drive conversions, which is going to be new followers. It's going to be sales for you. It builds your authority, right? Nobody knows how to make what you make better than you. Nobody can do that as well. And using your post to show that. And then also the purpose of building connection. And we're going to talk, you're going to hear the word community regularly throughout my post here, because if you're not trying to build connection among your followers, you might get a lot of people. There are a lot of ways on social media to just get a lot of followers. But how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them coming back to you? How do you get them so that if you haven't posted in a while, or something's weird with the algorithm, they go looking for you to see what's going on? And when you think of your post through this lens of information, education, inspiration, or entertainment, it may not change much of what you're already posting, but it provides a different lens and helps you see how this is part of your business. This is part of you telling the story of your business. So I want to give you a few examples from Meet the Minnesota Makers. So for the category of information and inspiration, my main thing there is the maker features, right? The stories, the human interest stories that I provide about, here's not just a beautiful cake or macrame or wood carving, but I want to introduce you to the person who is making this happen. And my goal in that is to drive conversions of people who will follow and hopefully also purchase from the featured maker. That, you know, you've heard about influencers and nano influencers. I think I'm like a pico influencer right now, but my husband teaches math, so these are terms that nano and pico, that, yes, anyway. But it was so powerful to me when I did a survey and the number of people who said, yes, I've made a purchase because of someone you've highlighted, right? So what you choose to include can inspire those actions. So that's my goal there. For education, I talk sometimes about maker services. So who are other small businesses who can assist the small maker community? Whether they're photographers, whether it's for establishing markets, whether it's my own copywriting packages. Sometimes I find out about grants. And I do this because it helps the community, but it also helps to build my authority of my knowledge of available maker support, that I'm more invested in makers beyond just publishing my own stories. For the entertainment piece, I share my own recipes. I share recipes from makers. I share events. Some of the entertainment comes more in my stories, but this helps me to build connection because it shows how I use local products and participate in the local community. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I want to pause and see if there's any questions so far? Or feedback? Okay,
I don't see anything in the chat.
all right. Trying to absorb. Okay, yes. Well, to help with that absorption, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put you on the spot because, like I said, my goal is that you walk out of here with some things that you can use. So keeping in mind those goals of information, education, inspiration, and entertainment, right? And then we have our purposes of driving conversions, building authority, and promoting community. So looking at those, I'm going to put you in some small groups, some breakout rooms for you to absorb and process a little bit. But what I'd like you to do in those groups is think about out loud, what are some examples of things you either already post or could post that would fit those categories, okay? So whatever you have shared in the past, thank you, April. I hope you can still jump into one of the breakout groups and get this brainstorming for yourself here. So I'm going to send you off in groups. We'll ask when you come back if a couple of groups would be willing to share a couple of examples of sample posts to help people out. Oh dear, people are leaving. All right, hopefully they'll come back.
They're like,
And maybe they'll come back in 10 minutes after the breakout rooms are done. And then we can just tell them what we came up with. So we're going to do this for about 10 minutes. So we'll say about 3:55. I'm going to bring you back to see what you have thought about with these initial categories, and we'll go from there. All right. So you will see a little invitation. There's going to be 5 different breakout rooms, and you will automatically be pulled back in at the end. So you'll see this little pop-up, click to accept that you get sent to the room. Okay.
okay.
Will you have that screen up so everybody can see the outline of what they should think about?
That's a great question. You will not be able to see it in the breakout room.
So do you want to post it one more time quick before we all leave?
I can do that. Yes.
Thanks.
Michelle, I believe if you don't join the group, but if you stay outside of it as a host, we can still see it maybe, but I could be wrong.
Let me see. I also did something really clever of, here we go. All right.
I'm just going to do a print screen of it and then post the print screen, copy it to Word so I can refer back to it. Can anybody else, appreciate or able to do that?
Let's see. All right, let me bring that back up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take a picture with my phone.
All right. People a minute to get a picture there. We'll see. I'll stay out and see if it stays up. I will also, once I do the breakout rooms, I can throw it in the chat. You might be able to see it there too.
Perfect.
Okay.
So Darren says that he's making bread, but he's listening.
Okay. All right. I think I need to, can I send you from here, breakout rooms? All right, here we go. Let's see. And okay, people should have invites up.
Hello. Can anybody hear me? I'm Roberta.
I can hear
Hi,
you.
Roberta.
Hi,
Um,
Hi. Do you use social media at all, Roberta?
I do not. Um, I have a site. I don't touch it at all. I don't go there. I have some personal reasons. I'm very political and I'm very opinionated. And I'm just afraid to use it. But I want to do a Facebook site for my little business that I've started now as a cottage producer. I'd like to do that, and then of course a website too. But the whole Facebook thing just scares me because of my opinions.
Right.
So, how about you guys?
well, April, you want to go first?
Sure. I have a personal Instagram account, a personal Facebook account, and then a business Facebook account. And everything I share on Instagram, it goes through then to my Facebook. Because I have more friends in my personal groups, I probably share there more about bread than I do in my actual business account. But yeah, I try to get in. I was pondering whether I should get an Instagram for the business or if I should just keep it a personal account.
Well, for my business, I resisted going on Facebook when it first came out for a long time, but we have family spread out all across the world now.
Yeah.
So Facebook works really nice to keep in touch with everybody. But I totally understand what you mean, Roberta, because my husband is a major political activist and I unfollowed him so I didn't have to see everything he says all the time. Not because I don't agree with him, just because I get tired of hearing it.
Yeah.
But now that Facebook has it so that you can connect your business website to your Instagram, I post a little bit more on Instagram than I used to, just because it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Okay.
And you can do a business Facebook page and not interact with anybody. Just keep it strictly for Facebook.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I like that. Just advertise your product.
Yeah.
Just yeah. Okay. So like, friends will ask to be a friend, and I don't have to do anything with that then.
No, they won't really. They probably, because it's a business page, it's going to be set up a little differently than an actual personal private page.
Okay.
So there's different, but you can still put any kind of protections, privacy protections on there that you want to.
All right.
I mean, you can block people from commenting anything at all. I mean, just post your pictures and leave it at that.
Cool. Okay. I like
But
that.
on the flip side of that, the more you interact with the community, the more your business will spread.
Oh, I'm sure if I could just keep it going. I don't know. I just don't trust myself.
It is hard sometimes. It is hard sometimes. But I content myself with just rolling my eyes quietly.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. So how do you feel this helps you with your selling then? And people getting to know your product?
Well, the good thing about Facebook is it doesn't cost any money.
Uh-huh.
And so, and there's so many people on Facebook.
Yeah,
So like Matt was talking about earlier, about being part of all the different forums and city groups,
yeah.
that gets your name out to the people. And people will post on there, I need a birthday cake next week. Is anybody available?
Ah,
And you can answer those.
okay.
So from there, there's a lot of information shared.
Yeah. How about you, April? You feel, how has it helped your business?
I know I'm not as proactive about it as I should. I should really get menus up there and press price points and have that part of things be more active. Most of what I do is just photos of bread and isn't this pretty and this is where we're going to be. But I think like looking at these information, education, inspiration, entertainment, and looking at it as more of a conversion thing, I think I need to grow my stuff like that, because most of what I'm doing now is either connections or authority type things, but I could really use probably the conversion as a way to aim more towards that. But
Mhm.
I know that I've have a couple of people who leave me reviews, which I think is really helpful for people. And then the community groups are also really helpful to like just watch for people looking for things.
Well, I notice when because you post that you're like at the Cambridge Market today, and I will stop and I'll think, do I have time to get there before she closes? Not today. But at least it gives me pause and I think about it.
Yes.
So that's a plus. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who does that.
I've had several people come to market and say, I saw your post on Facebook. So I figure that's got to be helping somehow as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Then Tom will do those live on the spot videos that you can do on Facebook, and he'll be like,
Yep.
"Yeah, I'm here today. Come see me. If you come in the next 10 minutes, I'll give you a free baguette."
Right.
And it actually brings people.
Um,
I don't know what else we're supposed to be talking about here.
oh, let's see. Oh,
I was driving for most of the conversation, so I'm kind of winging it.
Information, education, inspiration, entertain.
Entertainment. Yeah, that's one of those things you're supposed to kind of. I've been trying to get a little bit more interactive on the Instagram post by saying, little bits of, yes, it's a nice Sunday morning and I'm sitting here with my coffee and this beautiful cookie that I made the other day, and take a picture of it and put it on there, and people comment.
Oh, okay, okay. Just something simple.
Yeah, just little things. That's really what it's about. Keeping
Okay.
people interactive.
I I know I do a few farmers markets and people are always giving me inspiration. Oh, do we have to leave the break room?
It looks like it.
We've
Oh,
got
yes,
50 seconds.
okay.
If
But people give me inspiration for my products because I dehydrate food. And they're always saying, well, how about this fruit? How about the spice? And if I'm getting that from farmers markets, I could maybe be getting a lot more off the internet.
that's, yeah. And you just ask people people's advice and they'll give it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
And you can join us, on Third Thursdays with Tom. We talk about this kind of stuff a lot.
I saw that. Yeah, I'll give it a try because the time looked good. I am a school bus driver.
That wasn't long enough.
This meeting being recorded.
Okay. So, just like the awkward moment back in the classroom, I'm going to ask if anyone would like to share an example, perhaps, of something for information that you could share about your business.
Caitlin has her hand up.
Go for it, Caitlin.
So one of our group participants, Rose, she does canning and she said that she makes kimchi. So she said a lot of people don't know that hers is without, I think you said fish sauce, Rose. So educating how hers is different and
Yes.
sharing that with the consumer and just being honest and upfront.
Yes, that's great. And it highlights something that's distinctive about her product, whether it's because of dietary preference or allergy, that puts, right, it's unique with her recipe, but it's also a real service to have that available. That's a great suggestion. Another idea of any category. And if I don't see you, just go ahead and unmute and share.
Well, we were talking with Roberta about how she needs to get suggestions from people for different, she freeze dries things. And so people give her suggestions all the time.
Oh, sure. Sure. Which also opens a great opportunity for building community, right? Because it is that discussion. So the main topic on my ride home from school today, with my kids, there's a theme week for Spirit Week coming up. And the theme dressing days that they both voted for were not among the final cut chosen by the school. And there are some big feelings about this, but I can imagine on the other side, how excited they would have been if something they voted for was available, right? And so that's a great tool that I see a lot of makers and cottage producers do, right? Of including, hey, I'm thinking about this for the upcoming menu, right? And to get those suggestions, you may get some inspiration that way. Thank you. That's a great suggestion, Shelley. Anybody else? We get one more, please.
I was just talking about in our breakout that I don't do a lot of decorated cakes, but I do them with my kids for their birthdays, and those posts tend to get a lot of interaction because I post like the kids helping me in the kitchen and how we decorate, or like a little reel or clip of, my 7-year-old frosting a cake and stuff. And so those tend to get pretty popular in the algorithm.
Right.
Something personal about me that's not about selling them something.
Right. But it's community building. It's showing the range of the things that you can do. It's a perfect way of showing that behind the scenes, right? Which is something that People magazine wouldn't exist if we didn't care about the behind the scenes, right? So it's seeing that element is really powerful. Okay, so I want you to keep those ideas in your head. And we're going to talk now in this second part a little bit more of the how, right? So we've got the big picture of here's these concepts that you're thinking when you're going to put up a post and you're thinking about planning this. You've got these different categories, right? Of that information, the education, inspiration, and entertainment, and how to drive conversions, build authority, and build connection. So this is the big picture. And when I work with clients on setting up social media plans, we always start with this big vision. But then there's the actual logistics of how to do that. And so we're going to dive into some of that now. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. We got that. Okay. So first off, how should I share my message? Okay. And the how, if you're actually going to do this, the tools we're going to talk about this afternoon are your captions, your engagement questions or calls to action that you include in your captions, the images themselves, how you identify your post, how you're making use of your stories, and how you're making use of your direct messages or DMs. So first up is the captions. And obviously I'm a little biased as a writer, but the captions are one of the most underutilized things on any social media. On Instagram, you have a 2,200 character limit. That gives you a lot of space to talk about what you are sharing. Now, you'll see in the example I've included over here, this is from a post I shared over the summer that was a maker feature on Steph Kruger of Shorty Sweets and Treats. The first paragraph of this feature stresses the key words of Steph's business. So we've got the cookies, we've got the stuffed cookies, the giant Rice Krispie treats, her cake pops. Those are all listed right in the beginning. And having those key words in your caption, the algorithm, the artificial intelligence behind social media scans your posts. And so part of how I have connected with some other local cottage producers is by sharing a story like Steph's. And by it having those keywords, guess what? It shows up in your feed if you're also interested in making cookies or freeze-dried taffy or whatever that might be. And if you're not using that space, you're really throwing away an opportunity to connect. Now, not everyone wants to max out the 2,200 character limit, and I respect that, okay? There's you shouldn't all feel like you have to write this much, okay? I'm trying to get as much of my features, the full length ones are published on my website, but I'm trying to get as much information in there and then to encourage you to come read the full story. But I know very well that a lot of people won't click through to read it. So I want to make sure that the key elements of the maker are there. So the keywords are in there, and I do not include my hashtags in the caption itself. Why should I give up that space when I can put that in a comment and it's just as searchable on the post? It also aesthetically keeps the post from being spammy. I want to make sure that what I include in the caption, it explains my images. And part of and the algorithm part of this is that the algorithm is going to reward you, the poster, for the time someone spends on your post. And if they spend that time going through photos, if they spend that time at least skimming your caption, or if they spend it just being in awe of whatever the lead image was, it's all the same value. And with the algorithm, it is so precise that it is down to seconds, right? If someone spends 10 seconds on your post instead of the 2 seconds of like, hey, that's a great looking dish of whatever, like moving on, you get 10 seconds or 15 seconds from someone, and your posts are going to be more rewarded and go further. Don't write it because you're just trying to game the algorithm, but this is part of why you're wasting the space if you're not using it. And this is your forum to explain, hey, I made this cake with my kids. It's a family tradition that we make our own birthday cakes and decorate them together. You know, and I put the same kind of love and attention into anything I'm going to make for you, right? Or this is a custom order. Did you know I do custom orders? Usually I need at least 3 weeks lead time. You know, I can do these flavors. I can do these designs. Check my website for more. And if you're not sharing that information, you're missing an opportunity to better explain your story. To make it easier to do this, I highly recommend writing your text outside of the apps themselves. Personally, I hate typing on the phone. I still text with like a finger. I don't want to type all of this in here. So I have a separate Word document where I write up what I'm going to use in my posts, and then I copy and text them to myself and then paste them right into the app. This helps me keep a searchable file for myself of what I have already covered. And the other advantage is on more than one occasion, I have had a saved post get deleted or otherwise messed up by Instagram. And this way I have all of my text there and I can just go back and repaste it. I didn't lose the work that I put in setting it up. In your caption, you should have, if you want your community to respond, you need to ask them to. What do you want them to do? So at the end of Steph's post here, I have where you can find the full article. I tell you to go follow Shorty's Sweets and Treats. Why should you follow her? So that you can find out her market dates and her latest creations. That's the purpose of following her page. And you should follow my page if you want to discover other people like Steph. And at the end of your post, you should always identify your business. If you look at a lot of your professional influencers out there, they always close it with follow whatever it is for more. And you are professionals. This is part of your business. So make it really clear that that image of that amazing cake or these homegrown fruit jams or whatever you are producing, it's traced back to you. And those action items, if you want someone to comment, if you want it to be shared, go ahead and ask that. Not everyone's going to do it, and that's okay. But I notice a difference if I forget to include that in a post. It's very different than when I do include it. So it can be just as simple as like, share this with your friend who loves chocolate, or, you know, want to give people a hint for your birthday, right? It doesn't have to be a big ask. And the last thing I have mentioned here is that white space is your friend. Yes, there's a lot of text on this page, but you see that the specific asks, the calls to action, those are all set off. And I do try to keep my paragraphs short so that there's space for the eye to rest and that people keep engaging and reading through it. Let's see. I cannot scroll down in the chat.
The question is I thought you couldn't put web addresses in the body of the post.
You can include a web address. It will not be linkable on Instagram. But you can absolutely include the address there. Is the chat showing for everyone, or is that?
Nope, it's fine. I can see it.
Good. Okay. So no, you can absolutely include web addresses in there. It can only be linkable, like I said, through Facebook, unfortunately. Shelley, can you read what that one, the other messages?
It said thank you.
Yeah, she said thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Sorry, for some, I think because I have the presentation up, I can't actually get to the chat. So for images, again, like I said, the caption and getting people to scroll through that is one way of keeping someone on your post. The other thing is images. And it's one of these things that when I see someone put up just a single picture and all they put as the comment is yum, that I want to gently guide them to say, but you could say so much more here. Why is it yum? What are your ingredients? What have you put in here? Can you show me the before, during, and after? Can you show me something about your process? And so sticking with Steph's image here, we have several images that were a part of it. You have a max of 10 on Instagram, and you may not want to fill up the carousel every time, but having at least 2 to 3 up to 5 images to encourage people to scroll through and see more and get more information about you, it only helps better tell your story. With your lead image in particular, you want to make sure it's something that's very clear, that is attention grabbing. So the picture up in the corner of Steph holding the packaged cookies in her hand, that's a great image if you're not going to use the person's face. Including images with people in it, as you know, does very well as a general rule. If you don't want to be in your images, maybe you have family volunteers, neighbors, customers who would volunteer to appear in those images. But even if you don't want to use your face, right, having those close-up glamour shots of your product, right, or the ingredients that go into it, right? How are you sourcing it? What have you grown yourself? All of those elements. Now, I intentionally included here pictures that were oriented both vertically and horizontally. And this is something to keep in mind. When you are sharing images and you create a carousel, whatever you put as your lead image is then how all the other ones will be cropped. So if that first picture is really horizontal, that's fine, but then that's how it's going to crop everything else, right? Or vice versa. And so to keep that in mind, how you group pictures together in a post, and how you want to tell your story with that.
Amy says that she never clicks on additional pictures in a post.
Okay, well, that may be true, Amy, and that is, I'm sure, true for some people.
I think that a lot of people who aren't real familiar with Instagram don't always realize that there's more pictures there.
That may be. I mean, on Facebook, they're going to appear more automatically in that format, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I can tell you for those who do skim through, there's 2 things the algorithm does. Is one, it's going to reward you based on the time spent. The other thing that's going to happen is Instagram will display your posts using different images sometimes. It's not always with that lead image that you chose is what will come up in someone's feed. So it can make it look different. But to Amy's point, there are some people, no matter what you do, they're going to look at that first image, they're going to read your first 2 sentences and move on. And so that's where that lead image is really important. It looks like we've got a bunch of comments coming up. So
Mary Jo says, I always click on the rest of the pictures. And Melissa says, I always scroll through the pictures if I am interested because I want to see more.
Okay. Okay. So this is all, thank you, Shelley. This is all different ways of sharing your story with it. Oh my goodness. There we go. So next, about identifying your post. I strongly encourage you whenever you post to include your location. Make it clear to your customers, unless you're shipping, which most of you as cottage producers would not be. unless you're shipping, it's really relevant what your location is. And so in these two examples here, Lisa of Cookies and More by Lisa, her location is Apple Valley. That's where her home is. And Lisa's business is run through orders which people pick up at her home. As a general rule, Lisa does pop-ups, but she doesn't do markups. She doesn't do markets, right? So that is her primary business location. And so I know very clearly where to connect with her. And if I'm in St. Louis Park, maybe I'm not going to be as interested unless I'm really into Potisa. And then I'm willing to drive down to the Southeast Metro for that, right? For Steph's post, you see I listed Egan Market Fest. This article was published during the summer. Steph is one of the cornerstones of the Egan Market Fest on Wednesday evenings. And so when we talked about it, she wanted to highlight that as the place where people would connect with her more so than special orders. During the summer, she really depends more on the markets. And so listing whether it's a market location, where it is for your pickups, and I would encourage you to include that information in your bio as well. I know there's a large number. Don't put your street address in your bio, but say what corner of Minnesota are you? Right? Are you up in St. Cloud? Well, if you deliver down to the Twin Cities, then you should mention that. But otherwise, you're looking at a different market than people who are looking to connect with Cookies and More by Lisa. And making that really clear in your bio and then what you have in posts, because there's a limit to how long anyone's going to spend looking to see where you are, unless it is, well, you need to make it clear your location. If you don't have a website linked, right? If you simply have, let me cook for you, and I don't know where you are, I suspect you're Minnesota because there's people I know who follow you. But by having that information, you make it a lot easier for potential customers to connect with you and know exactly where you are. Another way where you can identify your posts is how you use your hashtags. And so these are the hashtags that I used on Steph's post. You see several of them are location. I also have in here both Steph's and my specific hashtag that we use. Something I started doing very early on was always including that hashtag in all of my posts. Why not? Why not link all of the things that I put together? And why wouldn't you, somebody sees something you created in their friend's feed, why wouldn't you have a consistent hashtag to make it really easy for someone to search for all of the things that you have done and shared about? The other things that are listed in here are Steph's specific products that she sells, and then a range of different Minnesota specific posts or hashtags, right? Searches of Minnesota foodies, Minnesota food, Minnesota made, and I've changed those up a little bit depending on the maker. Then stories are one of the best places for you to create community. You can get some exchange on the posts, but those stories, those 24-hour, both on Instagram and Facebook, those are going to help you focus on creating relationships. Whether you want to show behind the scenes of your work life, do you want to show menus you're considering? You can easily share these to both Facebook and Instagram at the same time. And this is part of how within your community, you focus on relationships, focus on maintaining connections with the people you have, and that will help you to grow and increase your connections, right? And some of it is, remember your goal in having the social media, right? You want to connect with people in your area who are interested in your product. Then as your business grows, you may have other goals, and then you're looking to develop it in that way. But you want it to reflect the stage where you are. So who are you most looking to connect with, right? And so focusing on those relationships, whether it's because you're sharing a recipe, you're sharing a family tradition, you're sharing something behind the scenes, and something that's a strength of stories, it's more relaxed, it's more casual, right? You don't have to plan it out in the same way. And it's a way to maintain your base and engage even when you're not posting on your feed. So if you look at my own page, you'll see that I haven't shared any posts or reels since a couple of recap reels right at the end of the year. I'm currently working on getting my next series ready. But I have kept the stories active, not every day, but enough that I'm still out there. I'm still connecting and letting people know what I am working on. And as a result, my engagement doesn't suffer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pause there because it looks like we've had some more questions come in.
Yep. Christine asked, is there a way to save your frequently used hashtags somehow so you don't have to type them out every time?
That's a great question, Christine. Yes, there are some social media management apps that you can use to do that. I have not found one that I consistently liked, but perhaps some other people who are here have a favorite.
Shelley commented, if you are using Meta Business on Facebook, it automatically saves them, but you can also save them as most used and favorites.
Yes, true. Facebook will prompt you with them. And Instagram it'll remember it and bring them up faster. Was that all on the questions right now?
And then Mary Jo says she doesn't use stories at all.
Okay. And that's okay. But I'd encourage you to give it a try. It was something that I totally hear you, Mary Jo. When I started with Instagram, I said, well, what's the point? Why do I need to do stories in addition to the posts? I have the posts out there. That's the information about the makers. And then the more research I did on it, I came to the conclusion that I was really underestimating the potential of stories. With my particular focus of trying to provide as many opportunities for people to connect locally as possible, it's a great forum for me to be able to reshare posts from other makers who I have featured in the past. It's a place for me to show how I use makers' products or what we're cooking. And it has provided some surprising opportunities for engagement and connection, which has sometimes led to maker features because of things I've shared and people have responded. And I wouldn't have made those things into posts. But you have to make social media work in a way that's sustainable for you. And if stories is just a bridge you don't want to cross, then don't cross it.
Yep. She replied, to listening to your presentation today, I'm beginning to understand why I should at least give stories a try. I'm going to throw out there, instead of just putting it in the chat here, because I'm sure there maybe are some people on here. When you talk about hashtags and that type of thing and creating your own, there's no right or wrong hashtag, right?
No.
As long as it's in good taste.
As long as it's in good taste. I would say just double check your abbreviation, that you don't, inadvertently say something you don't want to say. But, some people's custom hashtags are their business name. And sometimes, like Michelle Webb of Michelle's Cronuts, right? That she has her Cronut Crazies, right? Like that's her hashtag of like the people who can't get enough cronuts, right? And you see it all the time that she refers to the Cronut Crazies. And so that has the advantage of it brings you to her post, but also anybody who's ever referenced their enjoyment of her product. So yes, as far as I know, there's not a wrong hashtag.
Because what I'm thinking is there may be some people on here that have no experience with hashtags at all. So when you talk about creating your own,
Yes.
just, yeah. So I
You just start typing it.
Yep.
And if you find, as an example, I've been working with Masterpiece Chocolates in Lakeville on their social media. They had a good base, but they felt really stagnant and frustrated and lost with what they were doing. And so we've been working together to help them fine tune it. And they discovered they stopped using that hashtag because there's another Masterpiece Chocolates out there and they didn't want to direct traffic to them. And so I said, well, what else feels right for you? And they're like, oh, we could just do Masterpiece Chocolates MN. And I was like, yep, that's perfect, right? So it starts building the space to them rather than sending the business to, or the references to someone else. But
Fantastic.
looks like we have a couple more comments.
Yep, Kate Mickelson just commented in here. Here's a great trick for a way of posting the same hashtags easily using text replacement on your phone. And then there's a link. So you might want to go in there and copy and paste that if it is of interest to you.
That's a great suggestion.
And I'm going to copy and paste it to an email. Maybe.
Mary Jo says, I heard that you shouldn't use more than 3 hashtags in a post. What do you think?
I don't agree with that, Mary Jo. I think you should have a range of hashtags that are both specific and general. You don't want to have them all be just cupcakes. If you're trying to talk about cupcakes that you're selling in St. Louis Park, right? You need to connect with your community, but I believe Instagram will cut you off if you go over 40 hashtags. So that's what they've said is the upper limit. I would say somewhere between 10 to 20, go with it. And that's part of why I put it in the comments instead of in the post, instead of in the caption, I should say. Right, so then it still gives you the searchability, but it doesn't clog up the main event of your images and the caption.
Matt has his hand raised.
Yeah.
So as far as hashtags go, I read somewhere that for those of us that are basically small businesses, we need to look to see, like, we need to be careful about which hashtags we use, as far as like, we don't want to use hashtags that are 100 million views, because Instagram is going to look at that and say, okay, you're just trying to cheat the system, basically.
Mhm.
Do you agree with that, Michelle? Like, we should look at how many views that hashtag has and just look at more of a, like, for me, when I hashtag things, I am not a hashtag expert. I did create my own. I had a lot of fun with it. I put hashtag Army Guy Bakes. So, so just obviously something unique to me, but I look at hashtags that are probably less than 100,000 views. I do throw in 1 or 2 that are maybe in the 4 to 5 million views, but I try to stick with some that are generally 100,000 or less. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great strategy, Matt. What I was going to say, the guidelines that I have been looking at most recently is, let's say that you're going to settle on a dozen hashtags. So you have 2, like Matt suggested, that are really wide, right? That you're looking at, all truffles and all, because maybe you'll connect with a truffle maker in Belgium who's going to be really fun for you to connect with and exchange ideas with, right? But the main people you're trying to go for are people who are in Minneapolis, or they're in St. Paul, or they're in St. Cloud, or Bemidji. And that's, so you want to hashtag your locations. You want to hashtag the specific things that you have. And there's so many different Minnesota hashtags to make use of those when you are sharing. But that seems like a really strong strategy of having that that mix. Ones that are under 100, probably not going to do you much good unless that's the one you're starting for yourself, right? And then you're just building.
Yeah.
Or if it's one that you want to develop.
Okay, there's some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Does
Okay.
knowing your clients does knowing your client's potential customer base really drive different recommendations for uses of social media? For example, rural versus metro, ages, etc.
Well, yes. And where Instagram in particular will help you with that is if you click through to your creator resources, and that's where you can get into times a day that people are using it, their age groups, where most of them live, and that may absolutely influence what or how you are posting. But that's going to be something that you would research for your account, looking at those particular tools that Instagram does give you.
Mary Jo said good info about putting in the post. And Caitlin says, I've had issues with spam when they're 3 million plus views.
Understandable. And then, if you just choose to avoid those, or if the spam bothers you, just to delete it is also an okay option.
Hashtags can help center what you're working on, because I'm based in central Minnesota, but I deliver in the cities occasionally. And so when I'm doing a post about, hey, I'm coming down to the metro, if you want to place an order, I always do like hashtag, Twin City Foodies, or,
Yes.
Whatever that is. Or when I did the local Pride event, hashtag St. Cloud Pride. And so that connected with all the other people that were posting about Pride.
Right.
So they would know where to find me. So I think like hashtags can be useful if you know how to use them. As far as like the spam stuff goes, I get that anytime I post, because I generally, if I'm posting pictures of product, I do like cakes of Instagram or cookies of Instagram, which obviously has millions of views. And you will get a few people who like DM you or comment or like, oh, let me promote your post for you. Just ignore them. Don't take it personally. They're just trying to get their views up. So it's a business after all.
Yes.
But yeah, I think hashtags can be a way to connect with your consumers in a positive way if you kind of know what they're looking for.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great comment. And I like how you've tailored it, right? So when you are doing a delivery run, you really target those, and you may not mention those if it's not a delivery run, I assume.
Right. So like if I am trying to solicit local orders, I would do hashtag Central Minnesota or Central Minnesota Foodies or St. Cloud Foodies, depending on, and those hashtags obviously don't have a whole lot of traction, but I think there's enough that, you might get an extra person or two that it shows up in their algorithm.
Right. Okay. I'm going to pause on additional questions for a moment here to hit a couple of our last points. With another underutilized tool for creating community is your DMs. Your DMs, for better or worse, it's essentially another email account, unless you explicitly say in your bio that you don't want anyone to contact you through DMs. Strategically, something I consistently tell people I'm working with, shut off your notifications. Shut off your notifications for social media. Because if you're going to sustain a relationship with social media, it needs to be on your terms. And if you have those notifications on, it will be pinging in, or if it's not pinging in, you'll wonder why it's not pinging in, right? If there's a content, there's a message, there's a like, whatever it is. You want to treat it like a professional email account And a thing with building engagement, you respond to your community's DMs immediately before or after sharing a new post or story or reel. It's a way of showing the algorithm you have a connection with these people, and it makes it more likely that the people who interact with you are going to see the things that you're sharing. It also helps you to limit the creep of social media sucking up a bunch of work time that you don't want it to suck up, right? So you have to make sure that it is on your terms, and shutting off those notifications and responding when it is the right time for you is the best way to do that. Something else I would encourage you to do with your DMs is when someone new follows you, reach out to them. If you look at the account first. I have a few week lag, sometimes a couple month lag before I catch up and go through and contact people. But some of you who are here today are people I met because you followed me and then I sent you a DM. People won't automatically start following or may not engage with you because they followed, right? The algorithm may not show them, but you sending that initial contact post, it pulls some people in. So maybe you want to say, just welcome, glad you're here. You want to let them know if you have a website or if you have a newsletter, or if they're on Instagram, but you do more of your sales through Facebook Marketplace, let them know about that. Let them know that you have special events coming up or a specialty, or if it's someone you already know through some other walk of life, just thank them for following you there. And it's a way of creating connections. And it is surprising to me how often people don't do this among smaller accounts, right? But this is part of that community building and that connecting. And it has helped me to connect with so many makers in a way that wouldn't happen just by us happening to have followed each other. So we had a few questions come up. So I'm going to pass this. So the nitty gritty, how are you going to make this happen? So I mentioned here about shutting off your notifications. You need to plan your posts. You need to have a plan, whether you use a calendar, you want to write it down, you want to create a document, you use the notes function on your phone. You need to have a plan. You have ideas in there, make a spreadsheet, whatever makes it feel manageable and accessible for you. You need to choose your posting frequency. I learned pretty early on, it's not realistic for me to post every day. That's not going to be sustainable for me. It's not going to help me be my best self for my community and serve the broader community of makers who I'm looking to support in Minnesota. So if once a week is what works for you, and that's going to be your engagement time, then that's what you should do. You're going to have a lot of your influencers or social media management accounts will tell you that if you're not posting every day, then you're not going to grow. But you need to think about what is the right fit for you and your business and your goal with it. So weekly is a great option. Every 6 weeks is not often enough. Okay, but weekly or twice a week, whatever feels like a good rhythm for you. Use the formats that feel manageable for you. I use a lot more carousels of pictures than I do of reels. It's just what lends itself more to my storytelling. And I think actually what has happened is that my base has gotten used to that. And so when I do reels, either my reels are totally horrible, which is possible, or the other option is people are used to seeing the still post for me. And so the reels just don't push out in the same way. So I do them sometimes because something will lend itself to it, but it's not my go-to, and that's okay, because it has to be what feels sustainable for me, or I'm not going to keep doing this. So I want to pause here and get your questions before we talk about making a plan.
Christine says, how do you handle someone that DMs you and wants to collaborate, but they're, oops, lost it.
Oops, sorry.
But
I
their
see 'em
business
now.
has no connection with yours. I usually just ignore and delete.
That is what you should do. I have been a number of times, there's some like pet something or other that keeps sending me like, we're so inspired by your feed. And I was like, really, from the like 2 people I've posted about who make products for pets, we have fish. Like you're not sending me any products for my fish. Like I know that, right? So delete and move on. There's also someone that keeps spamming me of like telling me about my glamour, and they want to send me jewelry, and
Yeah, I'm getting that too.
yeah,
Yep.
you know,
Or
yeah,
the creepy stalker people that, hey, I really like your profile picture. We should connect. I'm like, no, thanks.
oh, and that's why the block function exists, right? And I don't know if it actually, I feel like it's whack-a-mole sometimes, and this is part of the downside of social media, right? So like I get tagged in some post of like, get 20 million followers now, you know, and so I block them and I report them as spam, and maybe it does some good. I kind of think of it as the same way of like when I pick up a piece of trash when I'm out on a walk, right? Like it doesn't clean up our whole neighborhood, but at least it's one thing that wasn't there before. With Amy's thing here about the more hashtags than content, I absolutely agree, Amy. And 2 things with this. One is why I encourage you to put it in your comments rather than in the caption itself to keep it from having that spammy look. And it's the other reason why I encourage people, again, you don't need to max it out to the 2,200 character limit, but I do encourage you to use that space to tell more of your story. And if you just want to think of it, you'll see for some people when they share, they have the description written in for someone who would be visually impaired and wouldn't be able to see the post. They have that description of it, and it'll say, you know, image is a 45-year-old woman sitting in a chair holding this and doing this, right? If all you want to say is, here's this chocolate cake I made, and I'm really excited about it because it's my favorite buttercream frosting, and we made it for a dear friend, and want your own cake? Here's how you contact me, right? It doesn't have to be 2,200 characters, but just spelling out that much. Tell me what I'm looking at. How do I get it for myself? How often do you make it? Right? It tells so much of the story and gives people a starting point to know what to do with your post. Because that beautiful picture doesn't necessarily, it makes me think, oh gosh, I do like chocolate cake, but it doesn't necessarily make me think, oh, I want to order your chocolate cake the next time we're going to get. Right? And that's how you use the caption. But if you're just filling it with hashtags and not giving any real content in there, I agree with you, Amy. Then, you know, what would you even do with that? Do I post on my personal and business page? I only post on my business page. And actually my personal page, some people have tried to follow me on there, and that account is still left over from when I was working with the students. And I have very little on that account. And anyone from Meet the Minnesota Maker World who tries to follow me on that page, I just ignore on that one. I keep that one separate. But that's part of my family's choice with things. We don't include our kids in a lot of the posts that we share. They show up occasionally, but I don't use their names. We just trying to figure out how we'll handle social media with kids in general. So for now, I just want to keep them off of it, is our personal stance.
Does anybody have any more questions?
So yes, first questions. Then I have just a couple more slides, and I feel like we started late and this may not work for us to actually do now. But I want to show you what we were going to do, because I know you have another session coming up here. So I can give you some takeaway homework for you to work on. And the last slide I'm going to show you has my contact information in there. If you just, this is not a like, don't contact me, because if you want to get some feedback on what you came up with here in this workshop, I would be happy to go through that with you, not as a like paying client thing. That's a whole separate world. So I just want to show you what the homework would have been to give you, because my goal was for you to walk out of here with a plan. So at least I'm going to give you the questions for the plan, and then feel free to contact me about the plan. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to share screen one more time. Okay. So again, those points of information, education, inspiration, entertainment, you're building connection, you're building authority, you're driving conversions. So when you think about your business, what makes your business unique? And if you're coming up with a 30-day plan, and you leave room for something spontaneous, but if you're planning 1 or 2 or 3 posts a week, what do you want people most to know about your business? What should they most know about your products? What should they most know about what makes you and your business unique? And so I'd encourage you, as you see in the picture there, my dad was a CPA and a lawyer. I have always thought on legal pads. Even with phones and computers, that's still all my notes that I've been balancing in my lap here for our workshop today. I think on paper first, and then I bring it to a computer. As far as how I plan out my posts, I have a paper planner that I write things out in there of how I want to space them, usually averaging about 2 features a week. And then you think about the stories, I let those kind of just happen. But for the posts that are going to stay in my feed, most of those are pre-planned. So my challenge, my homework to you is to give yourself the space. I know your brains are going to be so tired by the end of the day or by the end of this conference, but to encourage yourself to really make a plan on this, because that's what's going to make it feel manageable and purposeful. Because you're going to say, oh, this is what I want to tell people about. This is what I want to make sure they know is coming. And you have a plan for how you're going to get that information out. And telling them multiple times, it might seem really repetitive to you, but remember, any given time, you don't know who actually got to see your posts. If you have, we'll have a couple more minutes here for questions before you go on to your next panel. My email is meettheminnesotamakers@gmail.com. If I was starting the newspaper column now, I probably would have tried to think of something a little shorter, but that's what we got started with. You can find me on both Facebook and Instagram at Meet the Minnesota Makers. And I have a website where you can find some of the features as well at meettheminnesotamakers.com. Keeping all of those pretty consistent. And you'll see here, hopefully in the next month, my website will be changing over to something that's a lot more searchable and a better resource for people to find local. So I will open it back up if there are any last questions or feedback.
I don't see anything. I think people are just processing everything.
There's a lot to process.
Yeah.
Well, I'd encourage you to reach out to me. If there's anything from the presentation today where I can give you some more insight or just how I have handled it on my own feed, I am happy to share that. It has been a really interesting journey getting to see how social media can be used in a positive way. And the annoying jewelry spammers or Minnesota community, DM us, whatever, aside, the food world is a remarkably positive space overall. And it can really be a joy to get to know this community and participate it. And then it's just finding out what way it works for you. So
Yeah, what I'm thinking here, I'm the vice president and help out Shelley and yada yada. And I'm wondering if maybe we want to do a follow-up webinar with you maybe this spring once people have a little opportunity to digest this.
that
So
would be, great.
if you'd be willing to do something like that, that would be great.
I would, yes, I would love to have your feedback on what was most useful, and then what people would like to see have be expanded.
Yeah, and I know like February's busy and stuff, but maybe it would be nice to do it March or early April before like farmers market season and that type of thing, just so people can start getting their feet wet and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so maybe this homework, if it's a little detailed, we can have maybe some homework ahead of time too, because there is a lot of information to digest in a very short period of time.
Yes. Yes. And you have had conferences are amazing, and oh my gosh, your brain gets so tired. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that would be amazing to be able to guide people through more of the homework part and really do something to create that plan where we would workshop through that.
Yep, we're getting a lot of comments saying, yes, this would be amazing. Follow-up would be great. So if you want to maybe check your calendar for March and April, that would be great. I'm thinking early April because markets start the end of April, to be perfectly honest, because we do have another another webinar that's quite long in March already. So probably the first part of April.
Okay.
Maybe right after Easter.
I was going to say, we just have to see where Easter is. If we do it the week before, I imagine a lot of people would be busy.
Yeah, so after April 9th, but before the fourth week.
Yeah.
So yeah.
After Easter.
Not to be too specific.
No, but narrowing it down makes a lot of sense. That would be great. I would greatly enjoy getting the chance to work with people more to develop that and have their tools. And I thank you all again for the opportunity to be here today, and for your attention, and for being game when we threw you into the breakout rooms. And it's just, this is part of what, at the risk of sounding really kind of hokey, but like, this is part of what has been so exciting with starting Meet the Minnesota Makers and getting to connect with people in their journeys of their own small businesses and be a small part of the puzzle of trying to strengthen the small maker community. So it's really an honor for me to have been a little piece of your conference and get to share in that today. So,
well, it's great to have you. One of the things that we have learned through our cottage food journey is how amazingly loving the food community is. And I was honored to be a part of the National Cottage Food Conference that the folks in Wisconsin gave. It was the first and only one that has ever existed a few years ago, and they're going to be doing another one in April. And there's 900 people get together, and we all became like one great big family. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's really interesting as we network with people, how many of us are networking with the same people and we just don't even know it across the nation.
Sure. Sure. Yes.
So thanks again for being with us, Michelle.
Absolutely. I am going to go see what my little people have gotten up to, and I wish you all a great rest of your conference and look forward to seeing some of you later this spring.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice.